It's a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. So famously begins Jane Austen's book, Pride and Prejudice. Less famously, my contribution to this panel could begin, it's a truth universally acknowledged by our sector's observers and advisors that struggling trustees of the voluntary sector must be in want of a closer relationship with the business sector. And just as Jane Austen was gently asking her readers to question some of their assumptions about the proper ordering of society, so I too would like to question gently some of the prevailing assumptions about voluntary sector partnerships with business, very briefly. I don't intend to deny the importance for the voluntary sector of business partnerships. I simply want to invite you to spend a few minutes thinking about not only the benefits, but also the variety, complexities, and limitations of these relationships. In the current climate, where money is so very tight, other kinds of resources are very difficult to draw down, as we've just seen this afternoon, and the demands on voluntary organisations are increasing precisely because money is tight for everybody. In this climate, it's easy to see relationships with the business sector as the only remaining realistic route to organisational sustainability and survival. Surely the committed board of voluntary trustees should be embracing such relationships without being too critical. Yes, but there are a number of points which I think deserve some reflection by trustees before they or their staff embark on such relationships. And I want to telegraph just 3 of those points at this stage, not to put you off, but to encourage you to go into such relationships with a realistic approach. First, my own research has shown that there are a myriad of different ways in which voluntary and community organisations can and do form relationships with business. So when you're wearing your trustee hat, Lindsay talked about trustee hats, be aware of the full range of possibilities so you can choose the ones that best suit your own voluntary organisation and which are also appealing for the business concerned. The majority of so-called partnerships between business and voluntary organisations actually involve a transfer of resources from businesses to voluntary organisations. And you may initially feel that the best resource transfer for you will be money, say in the form of a sponsorship or even a good old-fashioned cash grant. But consider the other possibilities. Gifts in kind, for example, such as food or equipment, or the use of premises. Or you may be able to negotiate gifts of a business's staff time as volunteers or secondees, or maybe gifts of services such as IT or printing support. Even small businesses which cannot directly offer your organisation resources may be able to help you indirectly by securing resources from their clients or their customers. Think of banks and mobile phone companies and supermarkets, which encourage their customers to make donations to charities. Smaller local businesses can do that too. Second, businesses have a variety of motives for supporting voluntary organisations, so it's a good idea to look for the potential for exchange, keyword. Some businesses do still take a truly philanthropic approach. They help the voluntary and community sector simply because they think it's the right thing to do. They're corporately altruistic, if you like, and they're not looking for anything in exchange. At perhaps the other extreme, and beware of this, are those businesses which are brought into the idea that being corporately responsible is good for their financial bottom line. They're looking for relationships with the voluntary sector which will have a noticeable, measurable, and immediate impact on their profits. Between these extremes are a variety of other drivers for businesses to partner with the voluntary sector. For example, partnerships may be seen by some businesses as a means of raising their corporate profile, locally, nationally, even internationally. Or there may be a response to perceived wishes of customers, for example, for evidence of ecological or green credentials. or partnerships may be seen as a way of benefiting from specialist knowledge which resides actually in the voluntary sector, for example, about healthy eating or the environment. There are an increasing number of examples of voluntary organisations with specialist expertise forming consortia. Now, we heard earlier this afternoon about consortia, but here we're talking about consortia with the private sector, often to make bids for contracts. As many of you will be aware, debate about the wisdom of this particular kind of partnership is going on at the moment in the voluntary sector press. Those in favour see it as an important means of ensuring voluntary sector values are incorporated into service delivery, but the doubters argue that voluntary sector participants in bidding consortia are often no more than bid candy, who have little chance to provide input once the contract has been let. Third, final thing to think about, we need to think carefully about the assumption that it is a good thing for trustee boards to recruit people from the business world onto their boards. There are indeed a number of good reasons for doing this. People from the for-profit or private sector may well have crucial skills that your board is missing or needs in greater strength, for example, accountancy, legal, HR, marketing, IT skills, or simply skills about how to run meetings efficiently. Once on the board, they may also be able to make links of a more general kind for your organisation with their own business or other businesses, and such people can indeed be assets. At the same time, we need to bear in mind what we know from research in recent years about how voluntary boards actually work. We know, and Lindsay has mentioned this, that the best and most committed board members, as with other volunteers, are the ones who are motivated by the cause. So look in the first place for people who are excited by the goals of your organisation. If they also bring a skill that your board currently lacks, that's a bonus. But if the cause is not dear to them, you can't interest them in it, they're unlikely to make good trustees, irrespective of the skills that they can bring. We also know that many people do not want to spend their leisure time in voluntary work which simply replicates what they spend their time doing in their working life. So don't assume that a company's chief accountant wants to be your treasurer. He may well be willing to join your board and bring a generalised business perspective with him, but he may also be looking for his time on the board to offer him opportunities which differ from how he spends his working day. As somebody who worked for many years in a business school, I know only too well that some people in the for-profit sector still see voluntary not-for-profit organisations as amateurish, unprofessional, sluggish, generally poor organisational specimens. Such people don't appreciate or empathise with the distinctive motivations, purposes and culture which underpin voluntary organisations. So they may see their involvement as being about teaching you how to work in a more business-like fashion. Now, people who hold this kind of view can be extremely disruptive and divisive when recruited to voluntary boards. Again, Lindsay talked about the need for boards to work as teams. Well, here's one example of way that might not work very well. We're in an era when business ethics, corporate responsibility, and corporate sustainability are much in discussion in the business world. So in many ways, you're pushing at an open door when you make overtures to businesses to enter into partnerships with you. At the same time, do not make assumptions about what motivates businesses to partner with you or what motivates individuals to volunteer to join your board. Yes, it's true that there may be benefits in partnerships with business, but look out for the limitations of those universally acknowledged truths.